This Monday.com ad was created by a team of people and AI agents. Reese, our content agent, wrote the copy based on our best practices, like mentioning Monday.com 3 times. That was the second. Johnny, our coordination agent, built the timeline and kept everyone aligned. Olivia, our human creative director, stayed in the loop. Because agents are great, but they don't always know when a joke lands. She had one note: tell listeners it only takes minutes to build an agent. So, minutes. Create your own AI agent today on Monday.com.
That refresh you've been putting off until the right deal came along? It's here! Wayfair's Black Friday and July sale is happening now, so you can finally get the style you've been waiting for less. Get up to 80% off area rugs and up to 60% off outdoor and bedroom furniture. Shop Wayfair's huge selection of styles and find the piece to fit your style, budget, and space. Plus, free shipping. Black Friday and July ends July 27th. Shop today at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
What's up, fam? It's sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together.
We're breaking down the biggest headlines, the viral moments, and the stories everyone's talking about across women's sports.
From game-changing performances to culture-shifting conversations, we'll give you our takes, our debates, and a few laughs along the way.
Because everyone watches women's sports. Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy is essential, and it's also elusive. But now, there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. If you're craving inspiration to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Open your free iHeartRadio app, search Joy 101, and listen now. Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb is presented by CVS.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke, and Yerin. Have surprises?
Many surprises.
Welcome to the Sweet 305 podcast, where the group chat comes to life.
What up?
You're the only person I know that loves a yellow Starburst.
It's lemonade.
This is Sweet 305. Here, oversharing is encouraged. Listen to Sweet 305 with Lele Pons on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with Michael Bublé. After Kevin's recent interesting confession about Michael, we figured there's only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
You know, I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they were like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal.
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You've reached American History Hotline. You ask the questions, we get the answers. Leave a message.
Hey there, American History Hotliners. Your host, Bob Crawford here. Happy to be joining you again for another episode of American History Hotline. You've been sending us some great questions, and we want you to keep them coming. The best way to get us a question is to record a video or a voice memo on your phone and email it to americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. That's americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. Okay, today's question is about parties, and not the kind with cake. We're talking about third parties. Here to help me answer this question today is Michael Cullinane. He's a professor of U.S. history at Dickinson State University in North Dakota. He's also author of the soon-to-be-released book, Theodore Roosevelt and the Tennis Cabinet. Michael, thanks for joining me again today.
Thanks, Bob, for having me. Great to be back. Let's talk about third parties.
Let's do it. Okay, Michael, here's the question we were hoping you could help us answer. It's from Phil in Lincoln, Nebraska. He wants to know why third-party presidential bids always fail. Why can't we elect a president outside of the two-party system? First, Michael, I want to get to some of the third-party movements and major third-party standard bearers like Ross Perot, Ralph Nader, even Teddy Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party. But let's start with some basics about our political structure. Why do we have a two-party system in America?
Well, that's a hard question to answer simply because I guess this just developed over time. I mean, it's not like it's a natural progression or organic maybe, but it's not something that it's not something that was structured this way. And in fact, to Phil's question about third parties and them always failing, they don't always fail, actually. They don't succeed in the 20th and 21st century. But if you look back to the 19th century, you do see one of the most important presidential victories is really a third party victory. And that's the Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who, if you think about that 1860 election, there's four parties that are running. The Democrats are by far and away the most established party in the political system at that time. And the Republicans, they'd only been around for about 6 years at that stage. So they were a third party. It's only the second time they contested a presidential election, and Abraham Lincoln won because there were two other parties that were also vying for electoral votes. So it has happened in the past. It hasn't happened in what we would call modern presidential history. And I think the reason for that is the vested interests in American politics have just moved into two camps, and they've set up what is a very rigid first past the post system, which every now and then breaks or bends, maybe doesn't break. But the two parties are, because they're so much a part of our political culture, that when a third party runs, they have a chance to disrupt an election, but not win an election. It takes more than, in American history anyway, it takes more than just one political run to seize the day. It usually takes entrenched long-term political warfare to get across that post.
And first past the post, winner take all, right? Right. Our system is kind of set up in this winner take all, black and white setup.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, and that's something that you can really see well in some of the names that you mentioned that I said are like disruptors, right? So there's Ross Perot in 92. Bill Clinton doesn't get elected without Ross Perot. Actually, in 1980, Ronald Reagan doesn't get elected without third party candidate Anderson running and Jimmy Carter losing votes to him. The same could be said in Teddy Roosevelt's time in 1912. He runs and takes votes away from Taft, and we wind up with Woodrow Wilson. So we have these presidential leaders who are elected with a plurality of votes, but not a majority. Interestingly, Bill Clinton never won a majority of votes in America. He never topped 50%. Woodrow Wilson barely topped 50% back in 1916. So what these third parties do is they disrupt that two-party system, but they don't win the day.
Let's go to Europe. They don't have third parties. They have minor parties. How does proportional representation make an opening for parties, for more parties?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really complicated question, too, because proportional representation, or PR, exists in so many different guises across Europe. I'm speaking to you today from Ireland. And in Ireland, we have a system whereby you don't just pick one candidate. You pick the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth choice sometimes. And then they tally up those votes according to who drops out. So you could vote really radical and really conservative and see neither one of those candidates win. So it's a really complicated system in Europe whereby coalitions of parties wind up governing. And that's because you have a greater chance of a smaller party getting into power, but only on a constituency level. So with any election whereby you're electing one person to a single office, first past the post is the more prominent way of an election working out, even in Ireland. Or take France, for example, right? France has presidents just like America does. Macron is the president now. He ran against a slate of candidates in a first election. And then in the second round, it was a one-on-one competition. So in a lot of cases, the European elections for a single office, for like a president, those do look a lot like the United States. But in a parliamentary system, it's very different.
What you're describing sounds a lot to me like ranked choice voting.
Yeah, in Ireland, it is ranked choice voting, and it is a proportional representation. So constituencies usually have more than one person running in a constituency. In fact, they always do. It's either 3, 4, or 5 representatives. And in that case, it's so much different from the United States. So, where you're living now, you get to vote for one representative and you get to vote for 2 senators. But in Ireland, if you live in a constituency, you get to vote for 5 possibly constituents, and then a president, and then senators. And there's just a lot more representation and a greater chance of your vote counting towards someone who's from a smaller party.
Well, speaking of me in North Carolina, I'm unaffiliated. That is our version of independent. So help me define this really quick. I think a lot of people think independent, which means you're not part of a party, but that's a party, right? Like, what does the independent party stand for?
That's a good question. I mean, there have been so many independents in the past that have run, and they've often had shades of a party. And one of the things we might want to remember about the United States is that despite being a Democrat or a Republican, within that definition, there are various shades of red and blue. So much so that you might even be purple or gray or whatever. You know what I mean? The point is these parties are broad churches, and they include a lot of people that have very different opinions about everything from the economy to foreign policy. So um, being part of a party in the United States makes it easier to express yourself. Being an independent and then lacking that party system does make it harder because there's no organization for independence.
I think about Angus King, independent senator from Maine. I think about Joe Manchin before he became independent, and so did Kristen Sinema before they left the Senate last term. Bernie Sanders, right? He's independent, right? Or is
Technically,
he
right? Yeah.
technically? I guess Jesse Ventura was the independent governor of Minnesota. These guys, the higher you go, right, in being an independent, the higher the office, the harder it gets.
I think that's true. And the Senate does seem to be the threshold for where you can be independent and be without a party. Even Bernie Sanders, when he decided to run for president, ran as a Democrat. So you do need that party support. And that's no different the world around. I mean, despite there being more parties in Europe or in Asia or Africa, the reality is too that there are structural organizations that help candidates get their message to their base. And so being an independent makes that really difficult. But as you point out, there have been some really incredible independents over the past century in the US.
Okay, so let's talk about presidential history. You said early on that actually Abraham Lincoln was a third party candidate and he won the presidency. So the Republican Party, once being an outsider party, right, an insurgent third party, how did the Republican Party evolve from insurgent outsider party to one of the two standard bearers?
Okay, I love that question for so many reasons because it's really easy to answer. But it allows us to see like what's going on in American politics. So what makes a third party successful is a single issue, right? That's what really galvanizes attention and shifts the political compass in America. And obviously with the Republican Party, that was abolition, it was slavery, it was the fugitive slave laws. It was, there was a crisis that had gripped America. And arguably, when third party candidates have their greatest moments is when there's a singular crisis. When there isn't quite an obvious crisis, or when there's one that's maybe construed by a third party candidate, then they don't get as much traction. And that's because when it comes to voting, if there's an issue that grips you and you are, all in on that issue, then you're going to be able to pick a candidate quite easily. But if there's a cacophony of interests or there's a range of different issues that you're grappling with, then your choice for candidate just becomes less clear. And this is where we see in America the cleavages in the party system. So like at the end of the era of good feelings, when John Quincy Adams is leaving the White House and Andrew Jackson is coming in, what we see is a cleavage. We see Americans deciding that they want smaller governments. They want, less investment in infrastructure. They want a hands-off approach and they want patriotism, right? That is like the motivating nationalism of the time. The break then again after that in the next party system is with Lincoln. And you can see this, whether it's the Depression's a major break as well. So that's what really galvanizes a change in the political system in America.
Are we there? I mean, right now, 2025, it feels like we're past a breaking point and maybe something's happened and we just, as historians, we don't recognize it yet. but it seems like the grievance is there, right? There's definitely grievance in the electorate in both parties. The Democratic Party its approval ratings are as bad as they were in 1990, which I have to remind people that in 1992, Bill Clinton did win the presidency, but the Democratic Party is at a low point. The Republican Party has morphed. It's a completely different, it's put on different clothes, I like to say. So are we there? Is the time ripe for a third party, or are the parties ready to, where do the establishment Republicans go? You know what I'm saying? Where do those W. Bush, Reagan Republicans go along with these disaffected Democrats? What's going on? Is it time for a third party in America? Could one succeed?
Yeah, I mean, I think one can succeed. I mean, it hasn't, and there's lots of reasons why they haven't in the past, but you're kind of right. I mean, there's an instinctive sense of breakdown in who a centrist can be affiliated with if they're unhappy. I mean, what we've seen in the Democratic Party in the last couple of months is a move towards the left with Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going on tours, and that and also just an absence of opposition to Trump policies. But also what we see in the Trump world is Jeff Flake saying things like, when is the Trump fever going to end? Of course, Jeff Flake is that centrist Republican from Arizona. So there's evidence of that. In reality, the two previous major collapses of parties were the Federalists in the early Republic and the Whigs just before the Civil War. And both of those were precipitated by a major shift in Americans' sense of themselves, right? And one of them was the Civil War and the division between the North and the South. And the other one was this one that I was talking about, this nationalistic patriotism that led to the sort of expansion of the United States and all the trauma that would have brought as well. So we might be there too. I'm not sure we had a trauma that's like the Civil War. I mean, I like to remind people that Donald Trump is not our most divisive president. Abraham Lincoln is. It's true. States literally left the Union when Abraham Lincoln became president. We're not quite there yet, but it does seem awfully close, and it does seem like we're one economic depression away from a real shift in thinking.
So the major hurdles for a third party candidate today are money and
money. Actually, I'm going to be contrarian here a little bit. Money definitely matters, but money, if there's only one issue, money doesn't matter that much. And I'll just, remind your listeners that Donald Trump, when he ran in 2016, didn't have all the money, and he still managed to pull out a win, which, I think whether you love Donald Trump or whether you hate him, and there's nowhere in between for most people, I think, you have to give credit to a campaign that came out of nowhere and managed to win an election that no one thought they could win. So money's important, yes, sure, but having a singular issue that galvanizes public opinion is still the only way to win an election. And Donald Trump, most people didn't believe that he did that, but obviously his message resonated with people enough so that they decided to vote. I do think there are bigger issues, though, than the ones that Donald Trump has raised. I think there are major issues about America's place in the world. There's major issues about inequality that really could come to the fore. And I mean, those could be very violent. We've seen violent sort of clashes between the haves and the have-nots in the past in our history, but in other histories as well. And so things could boil up and really, leave an opening for a third party to fill that vacuum.
What's up, fam? I'm sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together and iHeart Women's Sports.
Because let's be real, women's sports is giving us way too much to talk about these days.
The highlights, the rivalries, the breakout stars, the moments that take over your entire timeline.
And the conversations that start during the game and somehow keep going all week.
Every week, we're breaking down the biggest stories across women's sports.
We'll give you our takes, our debates, and probably a few disagreements.
We'll talk to athletes, celebrate big moments, and get into what's happening on and off the field, court, track, and beyond.
Because we're not just interested in what happened, we're interested in why everyone's talking about it. Because everyone watches women's sports. So if you're already a fan,
or you're just getting into the game, there's a seat for you right here.
Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
On the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Hoda Kotb, host of the podcast Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb. Okay, if you know me, you know this. I'm always searching for inspiration, for support, and useful tools to help maximize joy. So this podcast lets us uncover all of that together. We're going to have these meaningful conversations with the world's most fascinating people, like when actress Olivia Munn shared how she overcame fierce health challenges that she never saw coming.
I've gone through breast cancer and then helped my mother through breast cancer, and that was more difficult. There's a lot of people who understand postpartum depression. I was not prepared for postpartum anxiety.
Olympic champ Shawn Johnson revealed why she had no choice but to be a gymnast.
There was something about gymnastics that was intoxicating to me. It's given me a belief that we all have one of those treasures inside of us. We just have to find it.
Listen to Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke and Yerin, Samira y Gracie. I'm so excited.
On a bouncy bed.
You have surprises?
Many surprises.
Welcome to Suite 305, where the group chat comes to life. What up? Es como que una forma de decir como, hola amiga, hola mejor amiga, hola hermana, what up?
Mira, nunca lo había hablado con nadie. Excepto con mis hijos. Mis hijos sí saben. Yes.
Sé mi amante.
Uf. Punch. Qué increíble. Ya la telenovela.
You're the only person I know that loves a yellow starburst.
It's lemonade. No hay alguien que te falta, como que tú dices, me gustaría colaborar con esta persona. This is Suite 305. Listen to Suite 305 with Lele Pons as part of My Cultura podcast network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jake Brennan, and on the Disgraceland podcast, I explore the wild lives of rock stars and unbelievable true crime stories from music history. These are the stories you haven't heard, the kind you'll end up telling someone else. Like the time Paul McCartney spent in one of the world's most notorious prisons. Imagine that. You're Paul McCartney. It's 1980. You're an ex-Beatle, and you're doing time in one of Japan's worst prisons, right there alongside Yakuza gangsters, and for a ridiculous charge. Or the bizarre crime Lady Gaga is accused of. Who is the artist Lady Gaga is being accused of doing the unthinkable to, after allegedly stealing her music and style to become famous? And what about that time Blondie's Debbie Harry escaped a serial killer? The man who had given her that ride she barely escaped from was Ted Bundy. Listen to Disgraceland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is American History Hotline. I'm your host, Bob Crawford. Today, my guest is Michael Cullinane. He's a professor of U.S. history at Dickinson State University in North Dakota. He's also the author of the soon-to-be-released book, Theodore Roosevelt and the Tennis Cabinet. We're talking about third parties, and yes, there are spoilers ahead. By that, I mean third-party presidential candidates that change the outcome of an election. Remember, send us your burning questions about American history, record yourself using your voice memo app on your phone, and email it to americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. That's americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. Now, back to the show. All right, Michael, we're going to talk about a man you are very familiar with. Let's talk about the 1912 election and Teddy Roosevelt's Progressive Party. First off, why did Teddy Roosevelt start a third party?
Oh, that's
if
a great
you would even
question.
call it that. Was it a third party?
Absolutely, it was a third party. No doubt about it. I mean, like, the thing is TR walks out of one political convention and then starts another one. So, I mean, that is like the ultimate definition. He got fed up with the Republican Party. They didn't nominate him for the... So let me just roll back really quick. 1912.
Yeah. Well, first of all, and forgive me for interrupting, but I've always been fascinated with the personal relationship between Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft. So this kind of sets up like Roosevelt's the president for 2 terms. His successor, his anointed successor is Taft. Is that correct?
That's absolutely, yeah. TR picks Taft to be president.
Because he's done being president. TR wants to go travel the world, hunt, explore. Okay, take it from here.
Okay, so this is great because this is actually where the book ends, and where there's a lot more to say. So Taft is Roosevelt's handpicked successor. He runs in 1908, and he doesn't do as well as Roosevelt, which is also interesting because I think TR picked Taft in part because he's not as charismatic or interesting as Roosevelt. I mean, think about it. If you were going to appoint a successor,
who is? But
right, exactly. But you're not going to pick the guy in the room who is like, heads and tails more exciting than you are. Although, as you point out, there's not too many people that are more exciting than TR. But he picked someone that he thought would continue on with his policies in an efficient manner, but not in any way that's going to steal the show. And that's pretty much what happens. Taft does continue with a lot of TR's policies. He doesn't appoint the same staff. And TR's like band of brothers, this tennis cabinet of friends, TR sort of expected that Taft would keep a lot of them on, and he doesn't do that. So that already starts to alienate the two men from one another. The night that TR passes the torch to Taft, the night before the inauguration, they had dinner in the White House, and things had gotten pretty frosty between the two men by that point. That's only about 5 months after the election. And interestingly, it's like a freezing cold night in Washington, and the two of them aren't really talking to each other. The two wives, Nellie Taft and Edith Roosevelt, aren't really talking to each other. They had real differences as well. And then TR leaves. He goes to Africa, which is probably the best thing that he could have done for Taft because he's not involved in politics. And but even so, within the 8 months, 9 months, his friends, TR's old friends, are coming over to Europe to tell him how badly Taft is running the administration. And the falling out pretty much starts when TR arrives back from his 10-month holiday in Africa and Europe. And he comes back to a hero's welcome in New York, which, again, you have to imagine the ego must have been like, riding a high crest there. And he thought, well, so he makes a famous speech in 1910 called the New Nationalism Speech, which really lays out the idea for a more progressive America. And what is so interesting about 1912 is that is the year when the first party primaries take place. And the first primary, in fact, is held in North Dakota, where TR had spent some time, and he loses. He loses to a more progressive candidate, Bob La Follette, who would run in later years. But anyway, let me not digress too much here. There's 13 primaries. TR wins 9 of the 13 primaries, which means he's got the lion's share of delegates. But as we know from those conventions that happened in like 2008, right, there are these super delegates as well that are basically party faithful, and they swing the nomination to Taft. TR is outraged. All of his friends and acolytes are outraged. And less than a month later, they form a new party called the Bull Moose Party or the Progressive Party. And that is the third party.
So why? Like, was it that TR was too progressive? Like, is that what it was?
Yeah, too progressive. And I think also Taft had made a lot of friends within the party by 1911, 1912. And he's the sitting president, right? I mean, who does that? Who dumps the sitting president? I mean, it didn't happen in 1976 when Ted Kennedy ran against Carter, right? So I think it's really uncommon for a sitting president to be ousted by their party. And so they don't bail on Taft. They keep Taft in, and Roosevelt, feeling slighted, and I think rightly so in a lot of cases, when you look at the counts of the delegates that are there, he starts his own party. And the party is much more progressive, like light years more progressive than anything we have seen in America until really the late 20th century. So we're talking about things like inheritance taxes, direct election of senators, which was actually quite popular at the time, workers' compensation, a national healthcare system. I mean, that is something that we still are arguing about, but TR was saying this is the right way to go. So it's a remarkable run. And what it does, and what's important to take away, like for the history of this time, is that it moves Wilson to the left. It makes it that's what third parties do. They force other parties to take up some of their issues in order to command their voters, really. And that's what happens to Wilson. Wilson moves to the left, and the whole country kind of moves a little to the left.
And ultimately, how did the Bull Moose Party do?
So they do well by third-party measures. TR wins. He wins more votes than Taft. So he winds up with about, I think it's somewhere in the region of 18% of the vote, something like that. And he wins nine states. I had to check the figures on that, but that's in and around. Wilson winds up with about 41%, which is actually, if you look at the numbers in 1908, when Taft runs against Bryan, the Democrat, the numbers are pretty much the same. If you add TR and Taft together, they're at 52, 53%, something like that. And then you've got Wilson at 41%. The other interesting character that's running in this election is Eugene V. Debs, who is a socialist, of course, and he's famous for being a union leader and outspoken advocate for communism. And he runs and gets 5% of the vote. Almost 1 million voters vote for Debs. So it's a really diverse four-way race in 1912.
And was Debs in jail?
He's in jail for a later election. I want to say it's 1920. But he does run from jail once, which of course there's sort of some, people have asked questions like, has any presidential candidate ever been convicted? And the answer is yes, Debs.
All right. So let's move on to Ross Perot. Although I could talk about TR with you all day. Let's talk about Ross Perot. I love going back to the 90s. I've been thinking about the 90s a lot lately and how the 90s gave us today. Like, I really think that there were cleavages in our society, in our culture, in our politics, in our in pop culture that gave us the moment that we're living in now. So for those who don't remember the 1990s, who don't remember Hammer Time, who have never seen a corded phone, who was Ross Perot and what role did he play in the 1992 presidential election?
Okay, I love this for so many reasons. I'm just going to say straight up, I was born in 1979. So the 90s are like my decade. I remember it's like a coming of age moment. And the 1992 election is like a real, it's a watershed. I mean, I remember when Dukakis ran in 88 and thinking, well, this guy's got a shot. And then thinking, no, that completely collapsed. 92 was exciting because it was just unlike any election in presidential history that really, Perot was a sort of squeaky billionaire, right? He's kind of small. He's diminutive. He doesn't have the look of a man. He's definitely not a Teddy Roosevelt, like command the room, but obviously super clever. He makes his name in Texas in oil and energy and mergers and acquisitions, but he also makes his name in politics because he was an outspoken critic of Jimmy Carter and the hostage crisis, the Iranian hostage crisis. In fact, he offers to fund American paratroopers to go in and save the hostages. And so he had this like muscular demeanor about him with like a Napoleon complex, it seemed like. But he was a businessman, and that's what people were attracted to in 92, I think. And I'd love to hear your view on that, because it's this idea that somehow politicians don't really know how the real world operates, and that business people are better suited to making big decisions and doing sort of jobs that involve leadership. And that was a revolution in 92, I think. I don't know. Did you feel the same way, Bob?
Well, absolutely. And I remember that election very well as well. As I've pondered the 1990s, which I'm a child of the 80s. So I was born in 71. So for me, the 80s are that special time. But my wife was born in 74. She's right between. She leans more towards the 90s. But I've really been thinking about the 90s a lot lately. And as now we have Trump, and Trump has become who he is, and is one of the most consequential presidents in the history of the nation, it makes you want to revisit the 90s. Because you see 92 and 96 differently.
Absolutely.
And Trump kind of grows out of the Perot movement or the because that becomes the Reform Party in '96 with Pat Buchanan. Does it? I mean, does it? Because Perot kind of like leans towards he's going to do it again, and then he doesn't. Or Pat Buchanan gets in there, and Trump and Buchanan are vying for the nomination for the Reform Party. So this is where we get in the American psyche. And well, it's not. There was Wendell Willkie, who was the Republican candidate. He challenged Roosevelt. Was that 36 or 40? I don't remember.
I think it was, wasn't
44. And
it? No, 40. It was 1940. Sorry, 1940.
He was a businessman. So this is not unfamiliar. Rockefeller in the 70s.
Yeah.
So this is not an unfamiliar idea in the American psyche. This capitalist nation that, of course, a businessman would be the perfect leader for this country. It makes perfect sense on paper. So
yeah, and I think Buchanan's a really interesting character in the 90s as well, as you point out. I mean, Pat Buchanan, a lot of the ideas about America first and about immigration, a lot of those start with Buchanan. And Buchanan Perot and Buchanan are like two ideologies really that are vying for the American mind at that time. Perot, you point out, dropped out. He dropped out in 92 as well.
But then he jumps back in.
He jumped back in, right. And then he jumps out later in 96. And so he was always a bit wishy-washy, which I think really doomed him. That was the thing. Like he was on the rise. It was his campaign to lose, because if you remember Clinton, there was so much scandal around Clinton. Jennifer Flowers, that sex scandal had come out. Then there was others that were just beginning to emerge during that campaign.
Whitewater, yeah.
Whitewater, right.
So you talked about single issues. Perot's was the deficit. And that wasn't a major issue at that time. Am I correct in that? Like Perot's the one who, when we talk about deficits today, it was Perot who brought that issue to the forefront.
Yeah, that's true. But there was a big economic issue in 92 that made Perot seem like a really viable candidate to most Americans. And that was the savings and loan scandal. So there was an economic recession in 92. The other thing is that George Bush had promised, this is famously, right? George Bush promised, read my lips, no new taxes. And when the savings and loan crisis occurs and when the deficit is on the rise, the only thing you can do to be fiscally responsible is to raise the taxes. I mean, it's going to be the same problem that America faces in later years. We've cut taxes for so many years, but you can't do that and still spend. And so eventually George H.W. Bush has to raise taxes, and that really sinks him.
Two things I remember from H.W. Bush, who, when we look back on him, he was all right. He didn't know how a grocery store scanner worked, right? He went to a grocery store and was like, oh, what is this? You know? And he looked at his watch during the debate.
I'll add one more to that, Bob.
Okay.
I always, as a child of the 90s, I would say that Dana Carvey is the thing that reminds me most of George W. Bush. If there was any political impersonator who sort of nailed it, it was Dana Carvey's impression of Bush. Like when he goes to Japan and throws up on the prime minister's shoes. That Saturday Night Live skit was priceless and no doubt had some impact on how Americans thought about the president.
Didn't Carvey also do Perot?
He did do Perot too. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So earlier we teased the spoiler effect of these third-party candidates. And I don't think in our recent memory, there's no greater spoiler in presidential history, maybe, than Ralph Nader. At least that's the way we remember him. Tell me about Ralph Nader and his role in the 2000 election.
Well, Ralph Nader, I mean, to be fair, is like just a really great guy for America. I mean, nobody's done more to protect your consumer rights than Ralph Nader. So he's a lawyer and an activist, and he has been for, his entire life, effectively. And he runs as a Green Party candidate in 2000 with no expectations of winning, but just to make a statement, again, like most third parties do, to try and tip the needle in the direction of a more progressive, really around green issues like the environment, but also around consumer protection and social welfare. And I don't think that Ralph Nader deserves any of the sort of credit for tipping the election to George W. Bush, because we're talking about one state, one state that was really the whole focal point of the 2000 election. And yes, Nader got a lot of votes in Florida where people were, just undecided about Bush or Gore after like the Lewinsky scandal, or what I would say one of Gore's like best things that he did was get Joe Lieberman on the ticket, because Lieberman attracted a ton of Jews in Florida who were on the fence. So putting the blame on Nader is like saying that Al Gore didn't do a good thing, like putting Lieberman on the ticket, or that George Bush wasn't really effective with a lot of Christians in Florida. I mean, one of my favorite things that George Bush did, I was kind of a McCain guy back in 2000. I thought McCain was, because McCain was a TR guy as well. And there's this moment in Iowa where McCain is asked, who's your favorite philosopher? And he says Theodore Roosevelt, right? And then George Bush is given the chance to answer the same question, and he says Jesus, right? And that won the day for Bush. I mean, it was the right answer, even though the better answer is TR in my mind. But so Bush and Gore were really effective in Florida. Nader pulled a few votes, but when it comes down to 536 votes, I mean, you could have easily blamed anyone. You could blame the Libertarian candidate in Florida for that matter.
Let's circle back to today's political environment. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, he's pushing for a third party, the American Party. We don't know if he's serious or not. It's very possible that this is all just a way of getting more government contracts, or taunting his old buddy Donald Trump. Two questions about Musk. One, was he consequential in the 2024 election?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is Pennsylvania and other states in the so-called Rust Belt, the blue wall as they were called, Musk had an influence. I mean, definitely in Pennsylvania, where we're talking about paying people to go out and vote for Donald Trump. That had an influence, and he did spend hundreds of millions on this campaign. So there's no way that didn't
$250 million.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money. And there's no way that his advertising didn't sway some Americans towards Trump. I mean, you got to look at Joe Biden and think, is he this evil of a president as people have been told? Because the media and the outpouring of vitriol against Joe Biden has been so terrible, regardless of the debate performances. I think Elon Musk deserves a lot of credit for that, as does Donald Trump, for that matter. But what I would say is that money can't buy you everything, and I'd be interested to see if Elon Musk can find an issue that he is so committed to and that galvanizes support. But free speech isn't it, right? That's not going to get Americans on board.
Well, I mean, and this is my second question for Elon Musk is how serious, well, I have more than a second question. How serious is he about the America Party? And who is the candidate and who is the voter? Because I guess the issue is the debt and deficits, right? I mean, that's what he seems to be saying, because he condemns the BBB, the big beautiful bill that was recently passed, as something that will raise the debts and deficits.
Yeah, so that becomes an issue when there's a crisis, but not until then. I mean, this is what I was kind of alluding to with Perot in 92. Perot and the deficit are important because there's a savings and loan scandal and an economic recession. So that makes the economy important, right? But without that, what are we talking about? Like, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the big beautiful bill is a fiscal genius idea that manages to keep America's economy humming along in some unprecedented way, right? Well, then the deficit doesn't matter, because there's growth and you grow your way out of a deficit. But if we see in the next 2-3 years a real economic decline, and or we see tariffs create a situation where inflation is out of control, then there's an opening for a third party candidate to come in and say, I've got the answer to this problem. But until that point, that just doesn't seem feasible. And from what I can see from Musk, he's not even talking about this third party that much anymore. When the crisis happens, you'll see he'll be back again all over Twitter. Big ideas will be coming out. but also he'll be competing with other politicians in the Democratic Party for that attention. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the context and then what happens in reaction to that context.
All right, Michael. Well, this has been a great time. I always really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you for doing this. So just to close, to button this up, 2028's around the corner. How many political parties do you think will be on the ballot come 2028? And I say this with the caveat of historians are terrible predictors of the future.
What do you mean? I think I'm a great predictor. I mean, I said Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016. And I don't like making predictions. I can tell you the Democratic and Republican parties will have candidates because they have for however many years. So we can pretty much bank on that. There will be third candidates too. I mean, there are established parties out there that we don't think enough about. The Libertarian Party will nominate someone. The Green Party will nominate someone. And then whether there is another fringe movement that can attract more than just 5%, which would really be a high threshold. That's the one that gets you to federal funding, by the way. So if you breach that 5%, the next time around, you get federal funding. That would be something to watch out for. And I think if we have a crisis in America, which, as we've already said before, it feels like something's brewing. But if there's a crisis between here and there, then you will almost certainly see a third party run.
I've been talking to Michael Cullinane. He is a professor of U.S. history at Dickinson State University in North Dakota. He's also author of the soon-to-be-released book, Theodore Roosevelt and the Tennis Cabinet. Michael, thanks for joining us on the American History Hotline today.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to American History Hotline, a production of iHeart Podcasts and Scratch Track Productions. The show's executive producer is James Morrison. Our executive producers from iHeart are Jordan Runtal and Jason English. Original music composed by me, Bob Crawford. Please keep in touch. Our email is americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. If you like the show, please tell your friends and leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Bob Crawford. Feel free to hit me up on social media to ask a history question or to let me know what you think of the show. You can find me at Bob Crawford Base. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week.
What's up, fam? It's sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together.
We're breaking down the biggest headlines, the viral moments, and the stories everyone's talking about across women's sports.
From game-changing performances to culture-shifting conversations, we'll give you our takes, our debates, and a few laughs along the way.
Because everyone watches women's sports. Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy is essential and it's also elusive. But now there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. If you're craving inspiration to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Open your free iHeartRadio app, search Joy 101, and listen now. Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb is presented by CVS.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke, and Yerin.
Have surprises?
Many surprises. Welcome to the Sweet 305 podcast, where the group chat comes to life.
What up?
You're the only person I know that loves a yellow Starburst.
It's lemonade.
This is Sweet 305. Here, oversharing is encouraged. Listen to Sweet 305 with Lele Pons on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with Michael Bublé. After Kevin's recent interesting confession about Michael, we figured there's only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they were like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal.
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.